Welcome to our next episode of Way Out of Childhood Trauma. And today it's here with me, therapist, hypnotherapist, RTT therapist, and specialist in neuroscience, Umar Sheikh. So welcome, Umar.
Thank you, Barb. Thanks for having me here.
So I know that you studied a lot, and your journey to becoming therapist is long and colorful. And I would say that you doing very important work with many people. So tell me something about you, like person. What attracted you to become therapist?
So, okay, it's funny, I believe that we all end up doing stuff in life, and it's leading us somewhere. We don't really know always early enough what it is. And now that I look back at it, I personally believe that my journey began some 22 years ago. So 22 years ago, 23 years ago, my wife was in a very serious car accident. So she suffered a coma, multiple injuries. And as a result, she'd forgotten when she came out of coma, she'd forgotten to read, write, speak, forgot me, so that was a fun month or so, but that came back soon. And now we fast forward. Now, what happens with brain injury is that you really don't know what symptom is going to come about when.
Yeah.
And there's just not enough knowledge out there. So now we fast forward and come to where we are today. What we started noticing about 2.5 years ago is a serious lack in her ability to remember, short-term memory. And yes, there were sort of, mobility limitations as well. But then there were issues with self-esteem because, of course, even with regards to memory, when she's not remembering how to do something, one gets to a point where you start feeling that, hey, I'm not good enough, I'm not contributing, I'm not capable, I can't. So that hits the self-esteem. And then self-esteem, of course, confidence is linked to it. So a multiple number of things just started to come about. That triggered me to start sort of looking more into the mind and the brain and trying to understand how everything kind of works and how it comes together, because we as a family, there's been very limited guidance in terms of how we can manage it, and we only get textbook answers. So we had to sort of dive into it and deal with it ourselves. So that kind of triggered me in one way to start learning more about the brain itself. But then on the other side, we've also got our youngest son who's got Down syndrome. So as he was getting older, and now I'm going back about 4 years, he's 15 now, but about 4 years ago, I started to get into this sort of feeling of, okay, you know what? His lifespan is going to be possibly around 40, 45. And, his brother and his sister are going to go off into their own journeys. They're going to get married and do their own things and whatever it is. And this guy is going to be by himself. I want to be able to make sure I outlive him.
Okay.
So that combined with my wife's experience took me into a direction where I started taking better care of myself. I started to learn about breath work. So I started at a very basic level, and then got into meditation and started doing yoga, and then started to look into different types of therapies or different modalities of therapy. And what I came across was, of course, you've got the NLP and CBT and all of these different therapies that are out there. But what I started to learn is that none of them in isolation really take you to a result that you want to have. They're very good in their own context, but they're very method driven, not necessarily result driven. This is my opinion and my experience, so, just bear that in mind. So I started to look around to do more things which would encompass everything, which would integrate all of these, because I believe that if we bring everything together, then we'll have a better solution. That's when I came across RTT.
Absolutely.
RTT combines the main 5 forms of therapy. And, from your experience, you will know, and I can, use examples of hundreds of my clients now as well, where we have managed to get a really conclusive result in most cases. And if not, we got to get a conclusive result. We've managed to get to a point where it's a lot more manageable than it was before, right? So that sort of brought me to RTT. Then I bolted on, went back to university at the age of 50, went back to university to study neuroscience and psychology. Because again, at certain points with RTT, also, I felt, you know what, I need to understand, I need to be able to get behind the eyes of my client. How do I do that? And that's where the neuroscience and psychology masters that I'm doing now comes into play. So I'm understanding a lot more about triggers, chemical emotional triggers, and how they are stimulated. So even when I'm doing the therapy, it's really useful because I am now better at using better words, more appropriate words, because I know it's going to trigger a certain emotion. So like I said, it's a multiple number of things that kind of came together and brought me to a point of knowing that, okay, you know what, this is actually what I want to do. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur and a chef by training, right? So this is a major career change. But that's, my journey in a, as a small of a nutshell that I could put it.
Yeah, but yeah, it's very similar. We sharing that the desire to put it all together and understand how it's behind is it. It was kind of same thing which led me to RTT to kind of push together all things I learned before. So yeah, and as you said, we can see that in the results of the clients. So that it's working. So it's really interesting. You mentioned your children, and you mentioned that was your wife had a car accident. So that was quite traumatizing event for them as children. And how it's affect them? How, we speaking about different sources of trauma on our podcast. So this is one of them. Is it like when our significant events happen, and also ongoing issues? Is it like lack of ability of the one parent? It's always
You know what happens in families or in a sort of community even, what happens is that it's the person who's actually suffering the injury ends up getting a lot of focus, and we forget about how it's impacting everyone around them. So for my daughter, who's now 22, for instance, she at the age of 8 or 9 ended up taking on so much more responsibility. So at the age of 8 or 9, we were behaving with her as if she was 14 or 15. Okay. Now within herself, I feel that up until maybe a couple of years ago, there was still a level of resentment as into why didn't I, I was the only child and she used to get a lot of attention from everybody. Amongst our friends, we were the first to have a child. It was the first grandchild as well, so there was a lot of attention. And then all of a sudden, it's gone. Child number 2 comes along, and immediately after, child number 3 comes along who's got disabilities. So while at that time, my wife wasn't experiencing as much of the symptoms of the brain injury, but that timing with the 2 younger siblings back to back, one of them with a disability who took all of our focus, both my wife and I think that affected her quite a great deal. So she became a bit of an introvert. She's very talented, but doesn't like to show it. I feel that she restricts herself from really pushing the boundaries a little bit. She is very, very talented, a great writer, a great photographer. She's doing journalism right now. But yes, it has affected her personality. And in hindsight, when I think about it, I do realize that, oh, hang on a second, all of a sudden from having all that attention, we just turned her into at the age of 8 or 9, turned her into a teenager who was babysitting for us and helping around the house. And so we don't notice. And as parents, we get so absorbed in trying to put out the fire that we overlook what our children are actually experiencing. The younger one, the middle child, and of course the youngest one, they were too young. So by the time they sort of got older, we'd come out the other end almost and learned a lot more on how to better manage our environment and the emotions at home. So they didn't get it so much. But my older daughter definitely did.
Yeah, I can personally relate to that because my mom, as many knows from my story, my mom had an accident when I was 4 years old, causing her a lot of issues. And even when I was the youngest one, I was the one who took on responsibility, and it developed a lot. And my brother has a lot of issues with dyslexia and other things, so he get all of that attention needed to get help with many things. So kind of can feel for your daughter how it feels when that responsibility is kind of put on, expected somehow, like get on. So do you think that you are now more equipped to help her, or that does she allow you to help her to?
Yeah, so I think it's important as parents, and I mean, I've worked with quite a few young adults even at the moment. So when I say young adults, I'm talking about sort of 17-ish up until 21, 22. Um, and what I realized and what we ended up doing is we actually, when we sort of realized that this is what she's experienced, we started to talk to her about it and acknowledge that, hey, we realize what's going on. We realize what has happened. And it's our fault because, we didn't know how to manage it any better, but she got the brunt of it. But now we're older and she's older. We were able to rationalize it and talk to her about it and allow her, not like you don't need to schedule a sit down and have it, have it out. But over time, very casually, some praise, and complimenting and building that confidence that, when you were this age, you were doing this and you were doing that for us. And you can't imagine how much it helped us and so on and so forth. And we're sorry that we overlooked certain situations. And, we sort of guided our relationship by the emotions of that conversation. And no, now, I mean, she's much better. Yet she's still an introvert. She's still on the shy side. I think that's personality is kind of built up now. But no, we have a very, very good relationship. She's incredible with her brothers, especially the youngest one. She's the legal guardian after us. They have a great relationship. So as a unit now, we're quite strong. But it is very much having that open dialogue.
Yeah, I see that, and what I'm telling you, and I with the families like that, it's really important. People saying I did my best. It's like nobody blame you that you didn't do your best, but the
Yeah.
children still want to hear that I am
And
sorry.
yeah, you'll be surprised. What I find with children is that if they have the opportunity to express themselves without being judged,
Mhm.
they will do it, and that's what we really need from them.
Yeah,
We give them that opportunity, and as parents, we can create that environment. And as therapists, yes, of course, when we're engaging with young adults, we always say to the parent, it's about the adult. I appreciate your opinion, but I've got to give the child what the child wants, right?
Mhm.
Um, and that builds confidence and trust between us and our client, the child.
Mhm.
Uh, but parents can actually also do that. It may take a little bit more time,
Mhm.
but it's about creating the right environment and having that focused time. So for instance, with us, when all the kids are together now, they're in college and university and stuff, but when we come together for holidays and stuff, and prior to them going away, we would always have our dinners together. There's no phones. It's that conversation, just that banter, making fun of one another, creating that safe space, and then be able to say that, oh, hey, what did you experience about that? And how did you feel? And so on and so forth. And I must tell you that becoming an RTT practitioner, I've been doing it for 3 years now, has enabled me to be able to have those conversations and be able to ask the right questions and creating that safe environment. So yeah, it is possible, and I would encourage parents to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I would agree with that advice because the children just want to express it. Like any trauma we carry on is unexpressed emotions. So
Yeah.
recovery is that way of expression. So when you're working with the with the young adults, um, what you would recommend the parents, like how if they feel that their children have the issues, how they should approach even maybe that topic that person need help, because sometimes they don't want to go for therapy or something. So
Sure.
what do you feel like useful, how to
The
suggest they
the great
acknowledge?
thing about children in young adults is that um, when something is up, there is quite frequently very immediate change in temperament.
Mhm.
So as parents, we just need to be observant, and we should always be open-minded about there being a problem, because a lot of those problems may not seem real to us because we're adults and we're grown up. Oh, so what if you've broken up with your girlfriend or your boyfriend? So what? It happens.
Yeah.
But we've really got to go down to their level and understand how they're actually feeling and allowing them to express that.
Mhm.
And getting down to their level, there's a wonderful book. There's a writer, Thomas Erickson.
Mhm.
He's written a wonderful book. It's one of my favorite books. He's a business coach, But this book, I think you should get it as well. It really applies to us. It's called Surrounded by Idiots.
Mhm.
And it's all about communication. And one of the most important sentences in there, the most important phrase in there that I've picked up on is that communication happens on the terms of the listener.
Yeah.
And that applies to all ages,
Mhm.
all levels of hierarchy in in organizations, in between spouses. It happens with everybody. So although this is very much a business coaching book, but it does apply in day-to-day life. And you can pick up a lot by just being able to, again, just creating that environment and giving them the opportunity to believe you're willing to get to their level of understanding and then be able to communicate with them. So that's always a very good starting point.
Mhm.
Um, and, you know, we don't sometimes understand what trauma is for a child. A trauma for a child can be neglecting them when they've become hurt by something. If
Oh,
they've fallen and hurt themselves, and we're like, oh, get back up, you'll be absolutely fine.
mm,
For them, it could be a message of, well, I don't care. I'm too busy. You're not important enough. We're not understanding how they are receiving that information, how they are translating it.
yeah.
So trauma doesn't necessarily mean it has to be something dramatic like child abuse. It
Mhm.
can be the simpler things. And children are always great to let you know because they will start behaving differently. So if
Well,
you've got a child who's generally very happy, but then all of a sudden they become quiet, depending on their age, their level of maturity, if they all of a sudden become quiet, there is something going on.
yeah.
So you just start observing, start listening, and start seeing things. Try to read between the lines, and gradually, not suddenly, gradually create an environment where they start feeling comfortable speaking about it.
Mm. Yeah, you are absolutely right because um, we all have the trauma is our reaction, our own reaction, is it? Everybody has a unique reactions on things. And one of the things which is most common happening, what I see in my life and like my clients, is that people assuming like, oh, that's not so hard, or hey, my life was worse, or I'm suffering with this, so what's happening to you, it's not so terrible, so that's not traumatizing. Yeah, so also like a lot of parents can, of course, through their own trauma, if it was in their childhood or if their adulthood, if it's the social, if it's the cultural shock of moving, if it's the better service, if it's the loss of job, if it's the struggling with the financial issues, yeah, so that is really very important to find out where we're passing it on to
Mm.
children, where
Yeah.
we children are very accommodating, is it children can understand if we are willing to explain and express our emotions, so they would understand that it's not their issue. And I find the most common problem is that parents hiding things from children, saying that they would not understand that, and the
Mm.
children start just believing that it's something wrong with them because the parents not speaking with them or withdrawing their attention.
Yeah.
It's running so own mill of thoughts about financial issues, and but instead of explaining to the children, this is situation we are now in, this is what we're doing for it,
Mm.
they with
Yeah.
just getting themselves closed off, is it? And that's
I mean, it's without a doubt, it's very difficult to navigate through, through the process and being able to use the right language and the right wording. It is difficult even as parents. Sometimes, you get caught in the moment and you sort of lose your temper and it happens. So I do feel for the parents as well. You're 100% right. Don't hide it from them because they will pick it up. Children are very intuitive, incredibly intuitive. And when you're facing even if it's financial stress, they will pick up that energy,
mm,
okay? And then they will react, and then they will start to wonder. And then here's the other thing about children, as you know, they have wonderful imaginations. So when
yeah,
they're frightened, you can imagine where their imagination is going to take them. And that's where their trauma believes, and that's where their belief system starts to change. So if it is financial stress, sorry, and you're reacting by getting angry or getting frustrated and just losing your temper on the smallest things, all right, they're going to feel that, oh, this is how it's supposed to be.
mm,
you know, bring them on board. I'm not saying that they should go ahead and say, oh yeah, you know what, we're about to lose the house. All right, I'm not saying throw it to them in a big way, but yes. So I'll give you an example. Let's just say I'm broke. I don't have money. My child wants something, from a store or whatever. Rather than me saying, well, this is so expensive. What do you think? Money grows on trees? I know in the back of my mind that I don't have the money, but now I'm releasing that frustration by getting angry and saying, money doesn't grow on trees. What do you know? You don't have to work for a living. I'm the one who has to work all the time. Okay, so now that is changing the dynamics.
Yeah.
Okay, so rather than going into a language of that nature, with them and sort of going into that negative energy and that's negative space, you could quite easily explain to the children beforehand that, hey, by the way, we're making less money than we used to, but it's okay. All we have to do is think on how to spend it differently. So instead of going out when so even before going to that point of going out to the store, we can explain that, look, we're going to have money. Money's not going to be a problem, but just going to use it differently for a little while. So instead
Yeah.
of having to be able to go out for dinner, 4 times a week or 3 times a week or once every week, we'll just go a couple of times a month, because the money we're going to save from there, we're going to put it into our holiday that we want to take.
Mm.
So children understand that, okay, if there's something missing in one place, we put it into another place.
Mm.
That's less traumatic and easier for them to process. Also doesn't affect their belief system. Because then, we also don't want them to grow up thinking that, oh, hey, when you're short of money, you have money problems, that's it. The world falls apart.
Exactly.
So there are ways to communicate with them, and you're right, bring them into your space, talk to them about it. Of course, talk to them about it. Remember, communication happens on the terms of the listener. Talk to them about it at their level, but do make them aware there's nothing wrong with that. And children really only need 2 things. And this is another thing I've noticed working with children, where they start to build on negative belief systems, or going into the side of trauma, which later on results in them being rebellious and so on and so forth. They need 2 things. They need security. In my experience, they need security, and they just need love.
Mm.
They don't need big cars. They don't need private schools. They don't need branded clothing.
Absolutely.
That is something we choose to do for them.
Mm.
They don't need it. But then what happens now, this is where the trauma begins, is when we get upset with children, then we throw it at them. I have done so much for you. I bought you your car when you passed your test. You wanted this one, but I got you a better one.
Mm.
Yeah. I pay for your birthday parties. I do all of this stuff for you. And what do you do for me in return? They're not supposed to do anything for us in return.
Mm.
They're children, right? So the first thing is that we sort of become competitive sometimes. We don't need to. Because remember, ultimately, whatever we're doing for our children, we're actually doing it because it makes us feel better as parents. So we send them to a private school because we believe
Mm.
that that's what they need, but we need to stop and ask, do they want this? I have one child who went to a private school and is still in private education, and another one didn't. They both ended up doing equally well, but each one of them said their own thing, that, yeah, I like this, I don't like this. So, okay, fine. As long as you're happy, because they just need that. They just need to be happy. They need to know that they're being heard, they're being loved, and they need security. They'll find their way from there.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely relating to that. Like when children don't have it, as it is leading to that result, which causing that trauma responses in adulthood, is it lack of inner strength, which is from being afraid as child, don't feeling safe,
Yeah.
that strength, and not build the self-love if you don't feel love. So is it, and then people saying like, why you don't care about yourself, why you're not promoting yourself, why you're not building your career? No, because I wasn't loved. So how I supposed to know what self-love is? Yeah. I had the one client, and he said a great answer for his father when he was saying it. He's like, I bought you this and bought you this. And it's like, I didn't ask you to be born. It's your decision. So like deal with that, you know.
And exactly, that's right. They don't even ask us to be on this planet. We decide we want to have the child, right? Exactly. That's it. And I mean, I've had one unfortunate case very recently where I'm working with a gentleman. He's 21 years old, and and he's the eldest child out of three. And for the past 2 or 3 years, um, because there's friction between the parents, they're not getting along. But each time they get
Mm,
into a dispute, they bring him into the argument.
okay.
That's been happening since he was about 18 now, 17, 18. So they've been bringing him to the argument because he's the eldest, so they think that he can handle it. And who do you think is right or wrong? This is what your mother is saying to me, or this is what your
Mm,
father is saying to me. And they are making him take sides,
oh, it's,
right? And now that has now sort of caused his trauma. He's now 21, he's working with me because he's very distressed and confused about himself. And he's become aggressive because he believes he needs to be very protective and take charge and be in control. So that's having, because of that, he's had issues at university and he's been sent back because he had a girlfriend there. And not that he was, in any way abusive or anything to the girlfriend, but he was very possessive and, hey, I've got to be in control. I've been treated like an adult.
yeah.
I know what disputes look like. This is how it's going to be, but he's handling it the wrong way. But deep down inside, here's the thing.
Mm,
He's very insecure. He's sad and he's insecure.
mm,
Because one, he's experiencing, observing, living in this instability between his parents. And remember, children need security. So if they're seeing
mm,
two unhappy parents and they're fighting, the child gets very frightened. And when I say child, remember this: at 21, you're still a child. You still haven't developed. You're not mature enough yet. In general, you're not.
mm.
Okay. So, oh wow, did you see all those things happen?
Yeah, yeah. You have the hands responses on.
I, I this has kind of happened on Zoom. I don't know how to fix it, so I apologize if it happens again. I don't know what it is, but
Yeah,
this
the
Zoom is
hands
really
gesture. Hands
okay.
gesture.
Yeah, okay. So I'll keep my hands down. I use my hands a lot. Um, so yeah, so we seem to believe like we made the mistake of treating our 9-year-old like a teenager.
Mm,
These guys at the age of 17 start treating him like an adult who should be mediating their marital issues.
yeah, yeah. That's it's about that children supposed to be children, and childhood has the role to have. It's time to find out who they are and what they want. So they should have the chance to say, I don't like it, I want this, because how else supposed to find who they are as the people? They'll be different and their beliefs is okay because they need to find out that who they are as a person. And if that it's all taking away from them from any different reasons, if it's the taking of the responsibility or putting on um, control, then they losing it. But what you would say that is advantage of um having therapy or deal with that in that age like so soon? Because some people would say, oh, let them be, they will figure it out when they will be older.
Well, I think Bob, you and I both know, the bulk of our clients are adults. For me, I think the bulk of my clients are plus 40. And whenever we work with them, the issue does go all the way back. The root cause of the problem is something that they've generally experienced. I mean, I've actually had a client who managed to learn that they experienced their trauma when they were in their mother's womb.
Mhm.
It can go back that far. Okay,
Yeah.
so so we can't just think that, oh, because they're young they'll handle it. What do they know about life? Life will teach them their lessons and they'll grow. Okay,
Mhm.
if we are saying that, there's obviously something that we also haven't dealt with yet. Okay, so the if we do leave it too late,
Mm,
it will come and haunt them.
mm,
And this, whatever they experience at a certain age, and if they're very young and their mind can't comprehend it, it will shut it down. It stays in the subconscious. just sitting there, brewing, waiting for something else to one day trigger it. That can happen when
I,
they're teens, it can happen when they have their children, when they get married, and that is when their life becomes difficult.
yeah. Also, so absolutely, because I think that like, yeah, of course we can sometimes fight by ourselves, but from my experience, I can, like, when you're trying to find by yourself, it takes quite time. And then you look back and it's like, why didn't I find this sooner? So I think that if is there chance and people do understand that their children need help, it's about that breaking cycle, is it? Like, if we manage to traumatize our children, we should be responsible enough to say we need to untraumatize them so they can be fully capable, functional adults, and not passing it on their children or their work environment.
Yeah.
Stop that passing on.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to beat up on parents, okay?
No,
Because yeah,
do our best, but in the
yeah,
situation we were in, is it?
yeah. But the one thing we do know as parents is that there's no right way to parent,
Yeah.
okay? Which means we are bound to make mistakes. If we don't take driving lessons, we are bound to have an accident, hurt ourselves, possibly hurt somebody else. But unfortunately, for life and for parenting, there are no lessons, right?
I
So,
know. Every
exactly.
child is different, is it? And we have the different situations. And even it's not against the parents. Actually, people with the best situation. I was in a situation when I didn't get to it by my own doing. Economical crisis hit, like, absolutely, people around the globe. People was losing the jobs, companies was crashing because somebody, I didn't want created situation when that we will end up in poverty for some time. And yet that happened, is it? But looking back, I had to take its responsibility and say, like, it did happen and did affected my child. So
Yeah.
how I will help him to get from it and not living with that, on. So it's more about that, or people grew up by themselves in, for example, abuse, and they didn't get a chance to recover because that opportunity didn't come to them. They didn't even know it's possible. A lot of people are told and still don't believe that they actually can recover by themselves. So often people, when they by themselves go through recovery, realizing how they affected their children, and it's not that they did anything they cannot do better, and because they didn't know to do any better, they were traumatized and uh, reacting from their own trauma. So it's not against partner, but when people do recognize that their behavior affected um their children, and also each children different. You can have the child which is, as you have, like, children which have the needs, and you can have like super talented child. The needs of children vary. If you have the more of them, it's really hard to kind of juggle. So I know what my mom was saying, like, I did my best. I was like, I know, mom, that you did your best, but that I'm not blaming you. I'm just realizing that needs sometimes wasn't able to fulfill because just not possible.
We shouldn't get defensive.
Yeah.
When a child needs something, we shouldn't get defensive because yes, you're absolutely right. We're doing the best we can, but what I've learned from my children, at least, I mean, they've taught me how to see things differently.
Mhm.
So I think the key thing is very much to make sure, to the best of your ability, have that create that space for open dialogue.
Mhm.
Be the first to ask. If your child is someone who you feel is shy or doesn't, may not open up to you, be the first one to ask. So, hey, I notice you've been talking to this boy or you've been talking to this girl more than you usually would. Do you like them? Open the door, because you know what is going to happen, right? So
Yeah.
why don't you open the door versus them trying to bang on it or even just walking past? Open the door. It is going to happen. All right. So, we shouldn't, duck our head in the sand and just pretend, okay, everything is okay, because it will happen. So open the door. So from a young age, start talking to them. Hey, by the way, if you ever experience this because of a certain reason, you can talk to me, because you know what? I experienced the same. All right. And this happened to me,
Yeah.
you know. I went, I did lose money and I didn't have a job. And look, this is how I dealt with it. And we all came through.
Mm,
Have that open dialogue. They can handle it. They can really handle it. Because unlike adults, children don't overthink a situation. They
mm,
don't create all the scenarios.
mm,
They're very clear in their thinking. They're very black or white. They're much more, it's much easier for them to rationalize a situation, provided they've been guided to do that right from the beginning. So don't hide it from them. They
mm,
won't be frightened. Yes, you need to speak at their language at their level, but they'll get it.
mm.
And I think we're in a world right now, we all are trying to do, as adults, we're all trying to do a variety of different things for self-help and growth and self-love and self-care and self. And we're doing it at the age of, I'm doing it at the age of 50. And, I've got friends who are doing it at the age of 40, 50, 60 even. What makes us think that our children shouldn't start now so they don't experience that when they're 50? So it improves their chances of longevity.
Absolutely.
you know and now that I'm in a situation where I can assess both sides, because I've got parents who are as stubborn as anything and they don't want to change because they can't change. This is how life is. And
Mm,
I'm right in the middle thinking, oh damn it, I better change. So I'm going to start working myself right now. And then at the other end, I've got my kids and I'm saying, hey guys, by the way, had I known what I
mm,
know at your age, I'd be a complete
mm,
rock star by now. So they're picking up.
mm,
So we've got to really open those channels of communication and share those experiences and tell them the stories, and make it fun for them. Make it fun for them. Don't make it a chore. That's another challenge I experience. And anytime we turn something into a chore, they won't do it. We got to get their
yeah.
buy-in. We got to get their buy-in.
Yeah.
I mean, from day one, believe it or not, all of our kids love going to school. Why? Because if they didn't behave well, the punishment was you're not going to school. Versus you're not going to get your iPad, right?
Working for them is great. My son would say, "Hooray! I don't have to go to school." So yeah, so it's each is different, is it? And it's about that find out what is working for your children. And I think that the very important things is to realize for everybody that our children are not us. We all are individuals and we are all unique. And you can be extrovert and have the introvert child. I had to learn like that my child is very different in many ways than I am,
Yeah.
and he would clearly told me like, you like this but I don't, you
Mhm.
do this, I would not. But
Accept that.
so we cannot expect, we need to give them the chance to speak. So Umar, it was great to have you on podcast, and I hope that you will come again. A lot of useful info for parents and young adults. So if somebody will feel that maybe they would like to work with you, or they would like their youngsters to get some help, what is the best way to contact you?
Instagram is fantastic, and it's my Instagram tag is Umar's Therapy UK. That's UMAR Therapy UK. So Instagram is a great way to reach out, and otherwise, of course, my website, which will have tons of useful information. The FAQ section of my website is very helpful. So anyone who's kind of thinking of diving into this, it'll be very helpful. You'll find lots of useful answers and a couple of great videos there too. And that's umarstherapy.com.
Amazing. I will put it also to the description of episode for anybody who is interested to contact you.
Yeah.
And so what will be kind of like last message you would want to give our listeners on our podcast?
I believe at any age, and I mean, I have the opportunity of working in a variety of different countries, different cultures, religious backgrounds. I mean, I'm from South Asia myself, so I've got a large client base in the Middle East and South Asia as well. What I would say is, one, don't think of therapy as something bad. Therapy is, you don't go to therapy because you're unwell or because you're sick. You go to you see a therapist just the way you'd go and see a GP.
Mm.
It's as simple as that. But here's the thing. When you are going to see somebody for therapy, especially if it's hypnotherapy or RTT, there's one thing that we will do very differently to any doctor. And I think majority of other therapists, when we're doing RTT or hypnotherapy, the one thing we do is there's a very important question we ask. And that question is, what do you want? So just imagine for a moment that you've been experiencing something and somebody says to you, what do you want? Let's fix it. And you can. So therapy is cool. Get out there, explore, speak to people. And one other thing, it can also be very intimidating to find the right therapist for you. And we kind of tend to give in. We don't ask questions when it comes to even doctors, therapists. We don't ask questions. Challenge them, interview your therapist. Make sure you feel completely comfortable, trusting, collaborate, interview 2 or 3, see which one you feel connected to, and then go ahead and engage with them. Okay, but therapy is cool, guys. Kids, youngsters, if you're listening, therapy is cool. It's fun. It's interactive. You get to really express yourself, and you get to learn so much more about yourself. And honestly, anyone who's listening out there, who's in their mid to high teens, early 20s, honestly, if I had the access to what you guys do nowadays, I would honestly be a complete rock star.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I agree. And I will encourage everybody. And our podcast is about hope. So it's about that it's possible. It's possible to have the life you want, wherever you are from, whatever age you are, and whatever problem you have, because it's all possible to change. We have that tools, we have that options, and it's your life. You can twist it and turn it upside down with the help of somebody. So thank you very much for being.
Can I just add to what you're saying? Because you said something which was absolutely beautiful. And I just want to add to that. When you were saying that we are in control of changing our life, here's a question to everybody. Think about this really, really hard. And I bet you can't find the answer. When was the last time something happened in your life which wasn't a result of a decision you made? Nothing happens by magic. You decide on what you want, and your mind's job is to give it to you. So just to confirm, Barb, what you're saying, yes, you are in control and you can make the change.
So thank you very much, everybody who listens us on any media, if it's the Podbean, Spotify, or YouTube, or High Art Video. Leave the message or contact. In the description of episode will be contacts for Umar if you want to contact him and ask if will be right fit for you or your young adults. And I will see you in the next episode. Thank you for coming, Umar.
Thanks.